Great. Welcome everybody. We'll make this as much fun as we can. I intend to spend almost no time on slides, but pleasure to have both Niall and Christian here with me. I'll let them quickly introduce themselves, and I'll go next. But Niall, maybe we'll start with you.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name's Niall Lee. I lead the strategy and transformation for Lincoln Financial for Workplace Solutions. So Workplace Solution has two businesses, the retirement business, so that's your 401k, 403b, 457 top hat, and then also the group protection business, which is like dental, vision, disability, and the supplemental lines of coverages.
And I'm Christian Tough-Nielsen. So I come from Ascot Group, which is a commercial insurer and reinsurance. So we've operated in London, Bermuda, and 5 years ago we opened up here in the US. And I am leading our AI strategy and AI implementation at Ascot.
Great. My name is Aman. I lead all of our revenue solutioning efforts at Skan. I'll give you a quick, maybe 1 minute overview of what we do, and then we'll dive right in. At a high level, just think of us at one end of the spectrum, a technology and an AI solution that basically powers all of your process improvement, continuous improvement teams. And then as we gather that data for any digital business process at hand, whether it's claims, customer service, underwriting, we're able to use that information because of the depth of what we gather and then apply that towards powering agents within the enterprise. So think of that as sort of the end-to-end spectrum. The data that we can use is one and the same, but really the reality of use cases are quite significant. So as you look at this slide here, and I'll leave that on there as we go through the conversation, there really is the core of what we do, which is every aspect of what happens in a business process at hand, which is a combination of people, process, and technology. So with that said, I thought, maybe the right starting point here is I think both Ascot and Lincoln are probably at different levels of maturity when it comes to the use of AI, the use of automation. So I think it might just be helpful to start with maybe where you are in that journey and maybe talk us a little bit about the evaluation process as you're thinking through where do you start, where do you go, and then maybe also tell us a little bit about what is truly top-down, driven by the C-suite and certain decisions they make vis-a-vis user-led and more bottom-up. So let's start there. Talk to us a bit about your journey. I know both of you are at different stages of maturity in this, so probably a good contrast on this front. So Christian, maybe you first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I joined Ascot 2 years ago, and it was just the first event was our holiday party. And I went around and introduced myself. So, oh, you're the AI guy? So, yeah, I'm the AI guy. Oh, am I going to lose my job? So, no, you're not going to lose your job. I'm just going to make it, a lot more interesting. But it kind of dawned on me that there was a lot of skepticism. So the way we kind of think about it is kind of two ways. Everyday AI, put it in the hands of every employee, because then they're not afraid, they're not concerned, they know what AI is. And that kind of changed the whole dynamics in how you implement AI. And then we have what we call embedded AI, where we change the workflows, and that becomes a lot easier when everyone is familiar with the everyday AI. I came from IBM and did a lot of consulting and also internal consulting. The worst thing you could have was what we call a push project, right? So somebody up, say, go and implement this project. When you push something down people's throat, then reset, right? And so you have to do it very carefully. So now we are this juncture. It's not a push anymore, right? It's actually a pull from the bottom up and say, oh, this actually makes my life a lot easier. I have these 7 ideas for what else AI can do for me. So it's really kind of from a push to really a ground up where people will embrace it.
Good. Niall, maybe from your side.
Yeah, from a Lincoln perspective, given the industry that we work in with a lot of PII and PHI, the regulatory nature of that, I would say we're rather on the early stage of our journey going to that maturity from an AI perspective. For example, we just recently launched Copilot Chat. I'm sure a lot of the people in this room have already used Copilot or a version of a GPT tool in their own office, but Lincoln itself, we only released that to our employee population. I think it was in July or August, and that's the chat version, not 365. So again, the process and the governance that we have to go through, we want to make sure that our customers know that we're deploying it safely, the data that goes into it, where is it going to get used, and then where we're going to make decisions on it when we reach out to a customer. From an evaluation perspective about how we want to deploy it, I would say we haven't looked at any broader end-to-end process and re-engineered something. We're doing more of an AI augmentation. So there's certain processes that have a lot of volume or a lot of, I would say, opportunity that could be transformed. And so we are applying it there. But we always start with the problem. And then once we know the problem, we then apply a framework to understand the value it's going to create. And that value can be on 3 factors. And you kind of heard it from Alex, who you, if anyone was in the room, that kind of carried over. It's around customer experience, it's around efficiency, and around growth is how we evaluate. Do we want to actually deploy this? Do we want to start off with a pilot and then roll it out to the enterprise from that standpoint?
Yeah, I think one of the practical things that we've heard from, I think, a lot of the conversations we have with senior level executives is we can do 50 things with this. How do you practically deal with the prioritization, knowing that there's going to be a limited set of resources, but the demand's going to certainly outstrip that? So how do you think about general prioritization, and how do you get sort of leadership buy-in on sort of making that decision? Because that itself can sometimes take months, and you don't want to take that long. You want to make the decision quickly, move forward, try and experiment. So what sort of framework do you have or governance do you have internally to help you with that?
So we have, again, those 2 classes of AI, everyday AI and embedded AI. So everyday AI, we have a funnel of agents and prompts that could automate a lot of tedious tasks, right? So for that, we do a kind of t-shirt size and how complex is it? How easy is it? And then we actually ask the sponsor, we need a business sponsor to do this, is saying, how many hours are you going to save? Mm-hmm. And then we have a funnel that is like 50 projects right now from the everyday AI. And then we have a AI delivery board with business stakeholders as part of that AI delivery board. And then we come in and say, which one do you want us to work on next? So very kind of, here's my funnel. I take this in, kind of very agile. On the embedded AI, these are more complex projects. We do POCs first, tend to do POCs first. Mm-hmm. And then we do a thorough business case and saying, if I do this for you, what are you committing to, right? And then you need that business case to really get the buy-in and the acceptance of going ahead.
Yeah, we have a lot of priorities that go along that we're trying to get done. We actually just were going through IT portfolio review. I think we are 50% oversubscribed with just our own initiatives that we need to get done without even overlaying AI. So everything I do has a cost benefit or a CBA tied to it. So that goes back to how are you going to either increase our margin, help us be more efficient, grow profitably, or enhance the customer experience. And all of that should be tied to a value. We let the numbers speak for themselves. So if you are a leader that wants a certain AI initiative to go forward, we ask you to sign up for some benefit. So you're either going to get an increase to plan. We may see your headcount be more efficient. We may see better retention or an increase in sales. All of that is factored into that CBA. And then we want to make sure that we hold you as the leader accountable to delivering that as well. So it's all numbers and fact driven. We don't want someone to scream from the top of their lungs and say, we want this initiative. We believe in this AI. So it always relies back to that fundamental problem list. What is the problem? How can that AI tool fix it? What is the value it creates? And then we put it back into that broader IT portfolio hopper. And then as we see where it falls from a priority and value created, we'll see that we align and we're always going to do the most value creative item on the portfolio stack.
If I can be, slightly forward looking in this, I think consensus driven decision making within organizations will often hold up stuff like this. How do you sort of get around that? Because otherwise you end up in a situation where putting all the stuff together, putting a CBA together, holding someone accountable. It's going to take time. And right now, I feel like in this world, I obviously have the benefit of sitting in Silicon Valley and seeing stuff move around me. Time is not your friend. No. So how are you navigating that? Because I know that's probably the hardest part that you got to navigate.
I think do you want me to go first? I think if everyone knows the process and they follow the process and they know why we have a process in the first place, it's not such a big stickler. Because then you take the emotion out of it. You're just going purely on a fact base, and then you're trying to push it through the process. The consensus base on the other side, when you look at the AI governance, that's a bit more of a challenge, I would say, that we have.
Okay.
But from an overall portfolio prioritization in terms of which ideas should we actually execute from a broader product portfolio or from a claims operations perspective or an AI, we usually don't have many challenges once we see the CBA and the value it's actually going to deliver. But AI governance, that's where we still have opportunity to improve. Go ahead.
Yeah, very similar, right? So our AI team never sit idle. so they are fueled, right? And it is an agile process, right? We never, on the everyday side, we'll take decision every week, right? What comes next? So that's not a big issue. The bigger issue is we're doing a lot of experimentation. Some you would say is redundant, right? And how to rationalize which horse you're going to ride on, kind of once you start rationalizing it. That takes a bit more time to get agreement.
The challenge to build on that part was like, depending on the resources you have, not all resources are fungible and they can be applied to different systems or processes or products. So some of it just comes back down to, do I have a team that has capacity that could actually pilot something, and let's give them something or the next best idea in that hopper? But there's a lot of times where there's already multiple ideas in contention for those same resources. So then you basically just go purely on value creation or value accretion to the business.
Let's say, for example, if you had to actually speed up that journey, hypothetically speaking, would you look to an outside partner to do that? Or how would you sort of, if you had the mandate and you had the resourcing, where would you sort of look to speed that up? Or is there an opportunity internally that presents itself on that front?
So our model is we have an AI muscle, right, and that goes full speed, and then we do a lot of staff work with external partners, and then we can dial that up and down, right? But you also have a lot of dependencies that you need to make sure you manage, right? So no data, no AI. When you come in, you start and say, oh, my data is not ready. So that's kind of, it's not only a T-search sizing, but it's also a technical, do we actually have the data? If we do it now, how much technical depth will we create? And should we wait, right? But I think we have most of it in-house, right, that can make those decisions.
Yeah, it's hard to buy certain resources when they have to understand the processes, the systems, the technology, the products itself. So we do like to see where we can augment or buy or work with a strategic partner like yourself, but a lot of it will still require internal IT resources, and that still sometimes does lead to being a bit of a bottleneck to actually executing on some initiatives.
I will add, kind of, for example, with Skan AI or similar solutions, what you can get out of it is, where are my bottlenecks, right? And then you can pinpoint to where do I get the biggest bang for the buck, right? So you can absolutely, that makes a lot of sense, right? And that's how we kind of create our business cases as well. So we know what are the efficiencies in our process. And then we say, if we do this and this and this, or redesign the process this way and embed AI in it, you get the savings that's going to yield. So that's how we do the business case.
Okay, got it. Now, enough studies out there. A lot of AI pilots have failed, 95%. Let's talk about the 5% that have actually succeeded. And what's actually made them, and by the way, the 95%, when this wonderful MIT study came out, it was old news maybe 6 months ago to most of us who've been sort of speaking and engaging in this space for long enough. So talk to us a little about what are the 5% and what sort of makes them, what are the symptoms that make those successful? And maybe Christian, start with you, given you've been experimenting with this a bit longer.
Yeah.
What is sort of, what are the 2 or 3 leading indicators perhaps of what will allow you to succeed? So you can actually make the odds of that a lot better.
Yeah. So we just implemented an Agentic AI solution, and it started as a POC, and then it went to kind of industrial strength setup, right? So number one is it has to be aligned with the strategy, right? So you don't do AI for the sake of AI. So you have to make sure it's aligned to the strategy. You need strong sponsorship. Without the strong sponsorship, you get nowhere, right? And then of course you need the capabilities to pull it off. So we had some summer interns the year before in 24, and it actually saying, oh, we get all these submissions in, and it's very labor intensive. So everybody's talking about submission intake, right? How you do that. So actually that started as a intern project as a POC. I mean, they sign up for the value, and then we took it from a POC stage to industrial strength. I invested money in it, and basically what we do now with Agentic AI, we do the submission intake, we do appetite check. Is this within? Is something we want to underwrite? And then we do a triage. How attractive is it? And then we populate the rater, and that done in house on one of the tech stacks, right? But that went from basically POC to full strength within a year, right? And part of that was also a very compelling business case. That team actually signed up for, I can do 25% more business if you give this to me with the same team, right? It's a very compelling team. So again, you have to articulate the value, you have to have the sponsorship, and you have to have the skills to do it.
Building upon that, I'll touch on from a strategy perspective, Lincoln, we're growing, which is great. We're getting a lot more volume coming through, but what that leads to is putting pressure in terms of how do we scale the business and grow it and still support all those claims. So from a strategic perspective, we want to grow profitably. There is an initiative that we did in partnership with a company called Evolution IQ. So Lincoln's Group Protection does a lot of disability claims. Disability could be short-term disability or long-term disability. When we actually go through those claims, or the claims adjudicators and reviewers, they have to read and review a lot of doctors' handwriting. There's a lot of forms. There's a lot of documents that come in. It could be hundreds of pages that person is trying to go through. So what we did with Evolution IQ, and this was a targeted pilot. We're still early on our journey. We did a pilot with them to basically summarize a lot of those claims and help the claims reviewer and adjuster know what would those next best actions be and what would a recommendation be to help you get back into the workplace. We started that, I think it was probably about 18 months ago. What we found from that pilot, and now it's in production, is that the recommendations it offered were highly accurate. So what that leads to is that Kristen can go back into the workforce earlier. That then leads to the employer that we work with having a better outcome in terms of having their employee back into the workplace. And the benefit from a Lincoln standpoint, that leads to us having a shorter duration on disabilities and leads to profitability from that standpoint as well. So definitely an all-round good story, and that's been able to save Lincoln a decent amount of money, but then also able to provide the employer a lot of benefit by having their employees back into the office with the right recommendation coming back from disability.
For the audience, one thing that may sound a bit, completely off topic when Christian said this, which is using summer interns, you'll be surprised how many organizations are actually doing that, us included. They tend to be a little bit scrappier than some of us who are, probably slightly mid to late career journey. And they often have a way of sort of saying, let me start from scratch and see what I can come up with. So that imagination element is still there. And we've actually found that to be one of the greatest sources of experimentation.
Yep.
So I just say, if you're thinking about where do I find or how do I find someone who's going to be willing to roll up their sleeves and dive in, interns for the summer are hands down some of the most interesting experiments you can run if you haven't thought about that. And I'm glad to hear that sort of worked out well for you. Can you talk to us a little bit about you said impact was about 25% based on, what that team was able to take in. Can you just give us a better sense for sort of what was actually done when you talked about the agentic piece of, or deploying agents and actually helping them do that faster? Maybe just unpack that for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the old process was, you get a submission, and in this case, it's reinsurance, right? You get a submission in, the underwriter has to unpack that submission, figuring out, oh, is this something we want to underwrite or not? They're spending 15 minutes on that. So, oh, no, I don't want to underwrite it. That's 15 minutes wasted. Next step is then, okay, I do want to underwrite it. Then I need to understand a bit more what it is and capture elements from the submission. And we might be missing some data, right? So you shouldn't have started that before you have all data required to start your underwriting process. Then you have to fill out your rater, right? And you do that manually, and it's not good time use for an underwriter. So all that added up to a lot of,
Wasted time.
Right?
For your most valuable resource, which is capital.
Exactly, right? So then we turned that around, and then we eliminated all that kind of waste, right? And especially in reinsurance, is not only you free up capacity. So we are capacity constrained, right? So if you could underwrite more, we don't have the bandwidth to look at all the submissions we get in, right? So that's a good place to be in, right? So you free up capacity, and you can quote more and underwrite more. But other critical element, especially in reinsurance, is speed, right? Yeah. So speed matters, and the first one to come back to the broker tends to win it, right? So now, before it was 24 hours plus, now it's within 10 minutes, right? And we get the quote back. So just kind of win rate, quote rate, and buying rate, it all goes up.
Excellent. I think one thing that we often tend to forget about as we're thinking through the deployment of agents, and we've seen this across at least many of our customers at Skan, is the people side of it. Yeah. How are sort of your end employees going to think about it? How do you get them warmed up to that idea? Can you talk to us a bit about that element? Because I think that's sort of the forgotten side of it in a lot of organizations. So sure, it's probably come up. You've navigated it.
Yeah, well, it came up recently with the rollout of Copilot Chat. So how many in the room have rolled out some kind of GPT tool to their employee population? All right, there's a decent amount.
Good amount.
Was there a success factor that your leader or organization wanted to say that we want 50% to start to use it, or 80% trying to use it? Yep. So some people throw out targets. When we went down this journey, we rolled out Copilot Chat to the whole organization, and someone, I won't say who, put out a target saying, hey, we should have like 60% adoption and actually be using that. When we looked at the stats in terms of who actually was using it, once something gets revealed, people start using it, and if it gives them the answer they want, they keep using it. If it gives them an answer they don't like, they'll say, hey, it's wrong, let me move on to something else, or what I'm used to doing to get me the answer that I actually want. So there was that initial, if the results were wrong, they wouldn't go back to it. And so you saw that initial spike when we initially announced it, and then we started to see it slowly decline from that standpoint. So what we did, any kind of AI rollout, especially if it's enterprise-wide, requires a lot of training and understanding about why we're moving, and it's a lot of change management. So we're now starting to roll out a broader, it's called Inspire AI, but it's a training program to help all employees understand how to use AI or how to use Copilot Chat and how to use it for their day-to-day work. We have our leaders on town halls sharing examples about how they're using it for their own day work. So our CEO talks about how they're using it to read a transcript going into an earnings call, or read some perspective or a customer article as they go into a meeting. My own boss shares articles with some of his own leaders about how he's using it day to day. I host open office hours with the managers to tell them how they can use AI to help them with performance reviews, to help them on summarizing an email, on reading a PDF, and giving them more capacity so they can do other things. But until you hear it from someone else, you really don't maybe necessarily know the power or what you could do in your own day-to-day job. So what we're trying to do is encourage all managers to keep having their stand-ups, share an example or one example about how they're using it, and hopefully inspire other employees to actually start to kick the tires and go back to Copilot Chat and actually see what the power is and how they can use it to get better scale and efficiency out of it. There is other things that we're doing in a more formal training program, but just boots on the grounds to get the momentum going. That's what we're trying to do. Anything? And again, just remember, we're early on from a maturity journey. Christian is a bit further along, but what do you guys do?
Yeah, no, so again, back to my holiday story, right? You know, am I going to lose my job? So if that was kind of the mentality, you know, that would be an uphill battle, right? So first thing I did was to team up with our HR team, right? And have some communication around it and say, you know, first of all, we have a commitment. We give you a commitment. We will educate everyone who wants to get educated in AI. And it's actually kind of the message is also super important for your own development and your own skill to have that. So if you have our commitment, we'll educate you in AI. You also have our commitment. So if your jobs get impacted, we will reskill. It's not a takeout, right? We will reskill you if your job is impacted, right? So that was a key message. And then we did kind of a gradual rollout, right? So kind of handpicked whoever raised their hand, the first 100 people who raised their hand.
Yep.
And then if you raise your hand, you won this, right? So the first 100, they were awesome, right? And then kind of dragged the whole organization. Then we went to 300, and then last year we went to 1,000, right? So as a guy, you know, communicate, educate, and create that comfort zone. And then this whole AI literacy, you know, you have to address that and make sure everybody understand what we are doing and why we are doing this.
Yeah, the other thing to add to that, I would say it depends on your workforce and who's trying to use it. So depending on the industry you work with or the products that you actually have, as I mentioned before, we deal a lot of PII and PHI. A typical claims person can't just take that email or the social security, date of birth information and jump it into Copilot Chat. That's a no-no in our kind of policy statement. So we want to make sure that they know here are the do's and the don'ts. When we initially rolled out Copilot Chat, the laundry list of don'ts was too long that people didn't pay attention. And so they were like, it's too hard. I'm not going to adopt it. I don't know when I should use it, when I shouldn't use it. So the easiest thing for me to do is not to use it. So then once we heard some of that feedback from the team, we actually worked back with the comms team, worked with our privacy and legal team and asked them to change the policy. And so now there's only 3 rules. You can't upload PII, PHI, or attorney-client privilege to Copilot Chat, but everything else is fair game. So feel free to experiment, learn what the capabilities are, and see if you can figure out a way of getting more productive in your own job. So that's what we try to do, to keep it simple and then get it out there in the hands of everyone as well.
Great. That's when you turn our attention a little bit of agentic AI. Obviously, everyone's talking about it, but can you break down for us, like, just maybe the gap between how organizations think these agents will work and maybe a little bit of what the realities on the ground, given the complexity within your environments and specifically within the tech stack and enterprises? I think, you know, we've been there long enough to know that as much as we like to believe that things are standardized, they're not, even on the same systems. So how do you sort of deal with that reality, knowing that there's this one wonderful picture painted of, you know, agents will work very specific, custom built, great, but the minute you deploy within your environment, 50 things break. So how are you navigating that change?
Yeah, so one is the expectation setting. And as I said before, we've been working a lot on the AI literacy. So I don't think that's this kind of expectation that an agent can do everything soups to nuts, right? So that doesn't exist anymore.
Some marketing materials. They meant to say.
Right. So there's some realism in what an agent can do. What there's not kind of, I think what we still need to do some education is time. It's not that you just kind of, oh, here's an agent, you turn it on and then it works, right? So there's a lot of things that goes into it. One is, you know, it's a regulated business, so you have to make sure you don't do anything stupid, right? So if you have an AI governance board, you have to go in here's what I do. And I have to say, to mostly legal, but also business owner, is it safe? Is it ethical? Any risk for bias? That kind of stuff. So we have to go through all that stuff as well. And then back to the data again, right? So Ascot, we operate in London, Bermuda, and the US. Do we have a consistent taxonomy? Do we call the same thing? No, we do not, right? So you have to be very thoughtful on where you deploy those agents, because bad data in, you're not getting good stuff out, right? So you have to do this whole risk assessment. I think where we have been successful with agents is all the unstructured data, right? Because you don't need curated, trusted data. You don't need 5 years of history. So that's why we can deploy a lot of the agents today on that unstructured side. What takes a little bit more time is on where we use history and deploy agents where you need history, because I need trusted, clean data to do that. And that's kind of an educational saying, why can't I have this agent? Because we have to clean up the data first, right? So again, as I would say, expectations are level set now, but you have to be thoughtful on how you deploy.
Is it fair to say that without good data, there is not going to be any real agent deployment, and that means you will spend as much time as you need to gather that information?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
We're not on a agentic journey yet, so we're still trying to get there. But I would say the biggest question that we get typically about agentic is going back to your early point about my job, is it safe? But you're still going to need someone to manage those agents. You still need someone to have the expertise. There's always going to be a kick out if something was to happen. How do you reprogram it? How do you retrain it? So that's where you can retrain or reskill certain managers to then take over those monitoring of agents from that standpoint. But we are still far and few between at Lincoln to actually having agents do underwriting or quoting or claims processing. I think our industry, just from a group protection standpoint as well, will want that human in the loop, given the regulatory bodies that we have to do. We have to show no biases. We have to show visibility in terms of how we made those decisions. So we will still have that expertise that's needed throughout that process.
We'll check back in with you next year. I'm sure there'll be some progress to made material on that front. We do have about 2.5 minutes to go. I do want to open the floor to any questions that people have. Please, and I think there's we help the mic.
First of all, thanks. Really a very practical session. So I've got one question, but broken down into 3 parts, right? So I know, Christian, you said that from pilot to production, everybody has gone through the MIT study. Everybody understands what the way agentic AI is shaping up. What percentage of your actual candidates that you identified as pilots, what percentage of that actually went to production? Part B of that question is that the ones that went to production, how many of them were standalone examples of AI, and how many of them were actually embedded AI within the processes? And third part is, Aman, to you, that does Skan AI, having known about Skan AI, but does Skan AI help in identifying the right candidates where AI can be infused? Sorry for a long question, but I think it's important for us.
Right. It's like you got a lot more pilots going through the hub.
So if I understood the question correctly, what percent fails and what percent succeed?
Or what percent sort of makes it through from initial evaluation, like candidates, all the way through to production? I think that's okay.
Yeah. I would say 50-50. So, yeah. And one of the reasons why they fail is because we don't have the data. It's not safe enough to do it, right? And so a lot of these kind of agents that we deploy out there, right? You do this assessment before you actually get started, right? Some of it becomes too, even though we started and it fails because, it gets too kludgy for the end user to do it, or it's not easy enough, right? And I would say if you don't cut out the old way of doing it, there's always a tendency to keep doing the old way, right? Because It's just I know how to do that, right? So you have to kind of cut out the old way, and that drives up the success. But I can put in a perfectly working agent, but it's not been used because they were used to the old way, right? And that's tends to be why they fail, right? And then if the technology is not ready for that.
I'll say I know we're out of time, but mine's slightly higher, but like happy to talk to you after the session as well and kind of explain a bit more as well, because I think the next presenter.
And if I look across industries that we serve, which is all regulated industries, primarily, I'd probably say that it's somewhere in the zip code 20-25% for the customers of ours who've actually done the very thorough evaluation, decide what makes it through the funnel. And I think the number one reason why they've identified stuff doesn't work is to the point that Christian made. They don't have clean, structured data to feed into the models. That's the number one reason why, at least that we've identified, things fail. And then to your question on sort of does Skan help with this? Absolutely we do. And that's sort of one of the recent developments. And we've also just yesterday happened to launch our manifesto on observation to agent, which is using the data we gather because we can see pretty much every aspect of a process. We're using that now to feed into actual models, agnostic to what model of choice you want to use within the enterprise, and then use that to actually guide and orchestrate an entire end-to-end, process or subset of tasks, if you like. So we are very much entering into that space ourselves, partly because, we accidentally find ourselves in the middle of gathering all the data, which is then, of course, proprietary to every customer in themselves. I think that is the moat ultimately that most enterprises have, which is their way of doing things and the specificity of the data that's theirs. Great.
We're out of time. I think
We're
we're
out of time.
Yeah, we're out of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
Thank
at
you.
time, but thank you so much to
All right,
Skan
thank you.
AI and our presenters.